All right, introduction to data structures. So this lesson is going to cover what data structures are, why they're important in programming, and give an overview to Python's built-in data structures. So basically, I'll give a quick example right now before we start. Probably the most common data structure in Python is going to be a list, which the syntax is to set a variable equal to square brackets, and then you can put any type of data in here. I'll go over this in more detail in future lessons and later down in this lesson even. But just for a quick example, like you could put people's ages, for example. Let me just fill it with some data. So then, let me also name this ages. So this basically allows you to have a collection of data that represents something, right? So there's a lot of power into this. You can organize things, you can manipulate it better, you can do certain algorithms on this, you can update all the ages at once, you can get a certain age. But yeah, that's basically what a data structure is. It's basically just a variable that contains different type of data or different data organized in a certain way, right? So yeah, it's a way to organize and store data so that it can be used efficiently. So why are they important to programming? So the first reason is for efficiency. A well-chosen data structure makes programs faster and more memory efficient. For example, say you had this, but instead of ages, it was grades. And instead of scanning a list of all students, say you also had a label, which is what a dictionary is, that has the student's name. All you would have to do is get the value associated with the name, and you can quickly retrieve that data instead of having to store everything separately and stuff. So another thing that is good about data structures is problem solving. A lot of problems require data to be organized in specific ways to solve them. And usually when you're working with data, if you organize it one way, the problem's going to get a lot easier than if you organize it a different way. For example, organizing a list of customers in order, removing duplicates, or grouping data. So if you have just a bunch of customers, you can easily remove duplicates of them. You can easily group them based on like what they purchased, what their age is, something like that. You could order them based on like when they shop there. And you could just do a lot of things and manipulate the data a lot easier than you could if you were just using variables. So again, using appropriate data structures makes your code cleaner and easier to understand. I'm going to quickly, on my other monitor, pull this up. So, here's an overview of Python's built-in data structures. I'll go through it. So the first one is a list, which I showed you above. Here's an example of student names. Sam, Bob, James, and that works for now. So that's how a list is represented. I'll go into more details about all of these things. I just want to show you the basics. A list is basically just a single data structure containing pieces of data ordered in some order. This is the 0th index because it starts with 0 instead of 1. Item number 1, item number 2. And it could be any type of data. So you can store other variables, integers, floating points, strings. Even in the same list, you can store different types. So that's a list. The next one is a tuple. So a tuple is like a list, but here, let me store coordinates in here. Something like that. So a tuple is like a list, except for you use parentheses, and the data inside of a tuple cannot be changed. That's the difference between a list and a tuple, or at least the main difference. So inside of a list, the data can be changed. If I wanted to like change the first item, I could do something like that, right? It can be changed. This one, if I try to do that, I'll get an error. The next type of data is a dictionary, which, for example, a phone book. So what a dictionary is it allows you to have key value pairs, like we were talking about before, where you can store things with the name and the grade. You can store things, a key and a value. These are like lists, but instead of indexing based on 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, you're indexing based on whatever key you set. And this is defined with curly brackets. The first item is a key. So max, and then something like that, right? Where you put a colon right here, and then this is the value associated with it, right? And you guys don't need to know how these things work in this lesson. This lesson's basically just giving you an overview so you have an idea of what data structures are. The next lessons will provide you context fully into like how they work, some specific things you can do with each of them, etc. I'm just gonna real quickly. Okay, so that's a dictionary. The next one is a set, and a set is an unordered collection of unique items. So, for example, say you're storing unique IDs. A set is also curly brackets, but you don't give anything a value. So you just define it kind of like a list, but with curly brackets. You don't have this key value sort of syntax here. You just separate them by commas. And what a set is it's unordered. So it has no order to it. And every item has to be unique in a set. So one uses for sets is you can convert a list to a set to automatically remove duplicates, then just convert it back. And you can also do a lot of mathematical operations on sets because they represent just sets of data. So the next main one is going to be a string, which you've seen already. Sentence equals blah blah blah. The reason that I have a string inside of this section is because strings actually have a lot of the same properties as other data structures. They're basically a container of characters strung together, and you can actually index them the same you can lists, like change different parts like this. You can do all sorts of operations with them. All right, so now let me go through an example real quick. I mean, I guess this is kind of the example I was going to run through. Let me delete this. So that should give you a basic overview of like what data structures are, the basics on how they work, and the next lesson is going to go a little bit more in depth with how you can use them and get started with them in Python.